There we go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Winston Robinson. I am a facilitator with the prestigious Tuesday Morning Forum. Welcome. This is the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. Again, I'm a facilitator. My name is Winston Robinson. Along with my co-facilitators, Ms. Mary Johnson, Ms. Laura McCletty, Ms. Carlenia Ivory Canty, Ms. Jackie Walton Edwards, Ms. Nathalie McElrath, Mr. Steve Johnson, our website editor, Ms. Sharitha Sherrill, our chaplain. The forum runs from 8:30 to 8:45, at which time we will pause for announcements from the audience. Announcements can also be sent to Steve at sjohnston@tuesdaymorningforum.org. We always begin with a prayer by Ms. Sharitha Sherrill. We're going to come into that right now.
Good morning. Bow your heads, please, and let's pray together. Dear Lord, as we face a new day, we turn our faces to you. We want you to help us to taste, feel, and see everything today. Lord, we thank you for the work that we're doing. We thank you for our lives. We surrender every part of our being to you. Thank you for transforming us as we help our hearts and minds stay on you. Bless our world, bless our nation, bless our state, our county, our city, our neighborhoods, and our homes. It's in your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Let us say together, amen.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sarita. Do we have any first timers? All right, you mind standing and introducing yourself? Church style, I'm not.
My name is Krista Bryce. I'm the owner of the X Academy. We are a contracted vendor for CMS. We provide behavioral homeless students and low-income students who are not homeless with tutoring, but also social emotional learning, as well as warm meals. We partner with several well-known vendors in the city to support these students year-round. We serve about 70 students per program, and we do a summer enrichment program as well as an after-school program. This fall, we'll also be getting into daycare to help the siblings in those families who are struggling to find adequate and proper daycare. And then we're also moving into the Wake County area. We've actually expanded. Wake County has now offered us a relationship and a contract there as well. So we just look forward to serving more and more homeless students. I myself grew up periodically homeless with my siblings. I have 7 siblings and a single mother. So I know firsthand and how that impacts a student's academic life. And I'm just really proud and honored to serve those families and happy to meet all of you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Welcome to the Morning Forum. Any other first timers? Any other first timers?
I feel like I'm on the staff right now. Raki McGregor's son, I'm Miles McGregor. I myself am a CEO of Charlotte-Mecklenburg and Immaculate Digital Agency, as well as make music. I'm an artist. So I don't know, I was in Miami for about 2 years, or a little more than that after school for about 4 years. Just relocated back here and started my own business.
So, welcome back home.
All right, so I'm Trayvon Beswick, and I work with CMS, and I help the kids learn social emotional learning. And it's my first time here to like help out with my house. So yeah, it's pretty good. Thank you.
Both of y'all welcome to Tuesday Morning Forum. Let me tell you, young fellas, networking gold is here. So, I want to feedback. Again, today's guest and featured speaker is Mr. Raki McGregor, the gentleman I've had the great fortune of knowing since 2018. He is representing CELC today. That's the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. He's the executive on loan courtesy of Novant Health. He's going to present to us and a few housekeeping rules. Following his presentation, we will take questions from the audience. There is no debate. You ask your question, they answer. You have the opportunity to raise your hand and ask the question after that, but no back and forth. Please raise your hand. Myself or Ms. McCletty will call on you or write your name down in the order that we receive it, and questions shall not be longer than 30 seconds. So with that said, I would like to introduce Mr. Raki McGregor.
Good morning.
Morning.
Is it okay if I just stand? Hey, Carlene. She snuck in. I didn't see her. I didn't see her get here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'll just keep the mic. It probably makes it more comfortable. I want to first and foremost, I want to thank Winston for the opportunity to come and speak. I want to thank Winston for the opportunity to come and speak at the Tuesday forum, Tuesday breakfast forum. I know it's gone through a number of different names over the years. Secondarily, I want to thank the co-founder, Sarah Stevenson, for her courage, her commitment, her seeing it through. I did some reading on this forum and was blown away that I had not been aware of it prior to this opportunity that Winston afforded me. And in reading about it, understanding just the journey that the forum has gone on, and the understanding of whether or not it was a mid 70s, 80s as far as when it actually started, but understanding that the individuals who were engaged in it, understanding the impact that mayors from Atlanta had in influencing us coming together. I saw some very young pictures of Arthur Griffin, a younger Arthur Griffin. But I'm just honored to see those in the community, in particular the Black community, that have been, had the discipline and the commitment and the courage to continue to see this through. Okay, so I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come. Thank you for this forum. I make a commitment that this will not be the last time that I will be in this forum, and more importantly than that, to be an advocate for others to come to this forum and speak. There's been a lot of progress that's come out of it, so I greatly appreciate that. And Carlenia, thank you. I was reading about how this forum actually was at the, I forget the name, I know it was the Ivy, what center? Ivory Baker Center. And I just so appreciate every time I speak to you. Actually, you or Arthur, I get it, right? Clear, direct, and to the point. So I greatly appreciate that. Today, I wanted to come here and speak to you all about an initiative that is a partnership between the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system and the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council. And I've changed the words of the title a bit. I've gotten approval from CMS to do that because I didn't like the loan part of it. It didn't seem like a partnership if the executives were on loan to CMS. And how we start matters as much as how we finish. So Hugh afforded me the opportunity to change the title. So we're going to be executives in residence. And in that residence, that shows the commitment to the partnership that we have with CMS. Okay. So I wanted to talk about, what is this executive in residence program? So before I do that, I wanted to ground on who I am. And I've heard individuals that I've spoken to ask the question, well, for Raki, how is this different? Okay. I really can't answer the question of how it's different. You have to be, the assessors of that. But I wanted to tell you who I am. So as a young man who grew up in North Carolina, I was born in East Orange, New Jersey, moved to Greensboro. See, we got one person from New Jersey in the room. Moved to North Carolina when I was about 10 years old. And when I did that and started school at General Green Elementary School, I was placed in classes that were to assist me with my reading. I had challenges reading. And those challenges sustained themselves. I just got better at hiding. Okay? So I could read. The comprehension was the challenge for me. And so that followed me. I got better and better at avoiding the connection of the comprehension and the reading. And I made my way all the way through school, all the way through high school, and found myself with a full scholarship to go to North Carolina A&T. And I hear you. And when I got to A&T, what happened was the rubber met the road, okay? And there were remedial courses that I needed to take in order to be afforded the opportunity to go down the path, the business administration path that I wanted to go down, which set me back, right? Set me back from the standpoint of now the cohort that I came in with wasn't the cohort that I was going to leave with, okay? And that was, it just got progressively worse. Long and short of what I'm trying to tell you is, it was because of individuals invested in me. It was because of people who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, pulled me to the side and said, Rocky, when I decided to leave school, they said, I believe in you. When you're ready, we'll be here to support you. They didn't try to force me into doing something that I wasn't ready to do. Because of that support that I had, not only did I graduate from North Carolina A&T a few years, come back and then graduate a few years later, but I went on to actually come into the job market just at the perfect time. If you all remember 1998, it was the time when the technology boom really took off, okay? Had I graduated in 92 when I was supposed to, we were in a recession, job market was very challenged. But I came out, and when I tell you I accelerated, I actually took what we would call now a CTE opportunity. The day before I graduated, May 8th, I took a CTE opportunity with a company, a third-party company, to teach me Oracle applications. And I worked 17 hours a day. It was an 8-week boot camp. I worked 17 hours a day to meet the commitment of that role. Because I did that, I was put on a trajectory that I would have never imagined or dreamed, okay? I'm sharing this with you to say, I have an understanding of the journey and the struggle associated with that. And because of my discipline and the relationship and commitment that others had to me, I was able to take advantage of the opportunities that were before me. That's important. We'll get to that. So the last thing I wanted to say to you is, with that journey and this opportunity that's been afforded to me by the CELC and CMS, I'm now in a position to actually see where I can bring others along with me, okay? Whatever that means, if that's individuals that within CMS that I can assist in some capacity, it means that. If it means those that are looking to volunteer and find out how can I get engaged with CMS, it means that. If it's corporations that want to get engaged, it means that, okay? And then lastly, and most importantly, I have a phenomenal family, a wife of 27 years. We just celebrated 27 years Friday. Y'all can applaud for that. Of 27 years, who's a fourth generation educator, okay? And I have two phenomenal children, Miles, who's here in the room, and Sydney, who's in Greensboro, finishing up her senior year at North Carolina A&T. No pressure there, she did that on her own. So what's possible together? What we're really talking about here when we talk about what's possible together is when CMS and the CELC got together, the question that the CELC asked was, how can we help? How can we assist? Is there areas that you would like to see us lean in? And Charlotte-Mecklenburg School said yes. We do have some areas that we'd like to see you all And those areas that they talked about afforded us the opportunity to look within a vast number of corporations. You all know the names of those corporations. You know, certainly the Bank of America is the truest, the Wells Fargo's, the Bank of America, the Duke Energy, and then the healthcare systems, Novant Health, Atrium Health, and an array of others, Honeywell, Train. We have some phenomenal corporations right here in Charlotte, based in Charlotte. Lowe's Home Improvement, just on the outside of Charlotte, you see their innovation center that they're building off of South Boulevard. Phenomenal, vast corporations. And so what they have are talent. How do we tap into that talent? How do we engage with that talent? How do we do that? We first look to understand what it is that our partners within CMS would like to see us come together with them and accomplish. And the goal here is, how do we maximize that partnership? We're not coming into this saying, here's how we're going to do it. We're coming into it saying, here are the 7 areas that CMS has asked us to lean in. The how comes from this conversation, conversations with school board members, county commissioners, the city, talking to our leaders within the community, the parents, the students, the faculty. There is no one that can't influence or be involved in the discussion of how we get things done, okay? So next here, these are the 7 areas that you're looking at that make up the areas of focus, okay? These are the 7 areas that make up the areas of focus. This order, there's no significance in the order. These are just the areas. So retention and recruitment, of teachers, administrators, and support staff. This is already being done. We're not bringing something new here. This is already happening. What we're saying is, in assessing the process, understanding what the goal is, how can we bring in thought leaders from this vast group of corporations to assist in making these focus areas more efficient, optimizing them, and thinking and ideating over other ways that we might be able to accomplish these tasks. The second is school safety, clearly something that we've been engaged, CMS has been engaged with for a long time. When you're talking about safety, you're not just talking about physical safety, but you're also talking about the virtual safety associated with that. So there's vast areas, threat, vulnerability, so on and so forth. Improving the physical and mental health services, critical. This is an area where there are a number of different partnerships that are currently underway. You all have heard about those. Bank of America is partnering with Atrium and a number of other healthcare providers to see how we can look at different models of how we can bring behavioral health and physical health into the school systems. It's interesting, I had a conversation with UNCC and their School of Education, the Cato School of Education, and their new Dean of Education there, Malcolm. And they were sharing some innovative ideas that I'm super excited for them to talk to Hugh about. So we've got that meeting being set up so that they can share with him some of their findings. It's really fascinating. And then the sustainability and effectiveness of our tutoring programs. How do we give kids like me who may be coming through the system? There are kids who appear to have it together that don't have it together. Then there are kids that we see that we know need additional help. How do we make sure that we're not missing anyone in addition to the focus of those that may not test, appropriately? Then we're going into extensive partnerships. I will tell you that is broad. When we talk about partnerships, it's an and. If you ask me a type of partnership, I can say yes, and then you can ask the question. That for us is how do we all lean in and create this ecosystem that's focused on our students, our parents, right? And our faculty members to ensure that we're providing them the appropriate education that they need to be assets within our community. Then when you see here this COVID-19 federal dollars, it's really about giving visibility and optics into where is the money going. Oftentimes we see these very large numbers, but we don't understand the restrictions associated with the dollars that we receive. So it's not, as most of you know, it's not as easy as, okay, here are the dollars, why aren't they going into this critical care area? Well, most times it's because they weren't allocated for that. So we'll provide assistance with that reporting. And ultimately, it's about improving the processes, how long it takes for a principal to understand where his staff that he's trying to hire is in the pipeline, having visibility into that. Oftentimes what you'll find is the frustration is not that the job hasn't been filled, it's in not knowing where you're at in the process, right? So visibility actually creates action. What you see here are the current and the future executives and residents that we're bringing on board. So I apologize, this isn't larger, but LaShawna Lowry, many of you may have seen her name or heard of her. She's a phenomenal individual who's leading the tutoring aspects of things for us, among other things that she's assisted me with. But LaShawna's been here since actually before mid-July, and is doing a phenomenal job engaging with the staff. We've got Elizabeth, and I'm sorry, LaShawna, if you can't see that, LaShawna is the Executive Director of Audit, Methodology, and Operations at Ally. She's a compliance, think of her as a Chief Compliance Officer, high acumen, strong process, stickiness. In the words of LaShawna, there is no room for failure in the work that we're doing. And then we have Elizabeth Sterling from Ally, Rich Miller from Atrium, Vanessa is Century, and they all start this coming Monday. And they're going to be focused on assisting with process improvements in many of those areas that I just mentioned. So they're looking at, okay, show me what your processes are, tell me, where your pain points are, and having a dialogue to see where there's opportunities for optimization across those areas. And then you see there are about five other resources that we're going to be bringing in from other organizations that I mentioned. So I think it's important here for me to talk about just the structures. So how does this work? You've got CMS, you got the CELC, you got these executives and residents. The model is such that CMS is the decision maker. They identify where they want us to focus. They thumbs up, thumbs down on whether those things move forward. They are the decision maker. Then you have the CELC, and I need to articulate the CELC or the CEOs. This isn't something that the CEOs are pushed down. These are the CEOs having conversations with the superintendent. Okay, so those conversations are happening. I report to the superintendent. I have weekly meetings with the superintendent. I have scheduled meetings with the CELC where I come in and I speak to them and provide them with updates. And those conversations that I have with the CELC are me and the CELC dialoguing with one another. Okay. There are two advisors to myself and the superintendent. And those two advisors are Charles Bowman, which is a well-known name here in Charlotte. He's a retired president of Bank of America, over the Charlotte region. And the other is Frank Emery. And Frank Emery was previously a litigator partner, Hunting & Williams, and is now the chief administrative officer for the last 2 years or so at Novant Health. Okay, and I meet with Frank and Charles about every 2 weeks or so. I meet with them. In addition to that, I meet with the chair of the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, Mike Lamont, who's the chair, retired training CEO, and the vice chair, which is Gene Woods. Okay. So I want to open it up at this point in time, if I may, for questions.
At the end of your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
So we take questions. We got hands while you were speaking.
Yeah.
And we asked the order of questions we received. Check. And Ms. Jackie Wall here, first question.
Good morning. Just for information, the
Yes.
superintendent will be on a Zoom call tomorrow night with the Black Political Call. My question is, about a month ago, we had someone from the school system with CTE.
Mm-hmm.
And I beg your pardon?
Susan Gann? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
And there were quite a few questions that we did not get answers to, such as linkages. And I guess that's something that I want to know, is that something that you will look at since you're kind of a CTE man?
Mm-hmm. So when you say linkages, could you just be more specific?
With the community and with the students.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, so
Is that correct? Yeah. Those who are here.
there are, so first, let me say that Susan Gann, I met her maybe 4 years ago, and we took a city trip to Denver where we were looking at an apprentice program that's very successful there. Susan, I know her to be someone committed to this space and committed to career opportunities for our young people. The question that you're asking associated with, getting more deeply connected so that there's connection, the answer to that is yes. That is one of the areas that I'm most excited about, if I'm being very direct with you, because it doesn't require a 4-year degree. I view that through a lens of how many individuals can afford to pay the cost to go to school. And then once they pay that cost, the career opportunity to debt that they have makes it very challenging for them to then, move forward. What if an individual had a skill set where they could get, a certificate, accreditation, so on and so forth, and actually develop funding to where you develop a base and then, pursue. But when you're pursuing, hopefully in doing that, you're 2 years already in to the profession that you're looking to go into. So the answer to your question is we're definitely looking at that. Susan will be the lead. I will tell you that in the 4 years that I've engaged with her, not as much as, it's not been a lot, but I've seen her to be assertive and certainly moving in the appropriate direction. So the answer to your question is yes, we will. And what I would ask is that we come back and it'd be Susan and it'd be the executives in residence, and we provide you with an update. That would be my ask.
Absolutely.
Ms. Carlene?
Okay, then you can put me down. I have 3 questions, so I'll ask one now. First, I want to say I didn't know you had such a face first.
Well, since we're talking about first name, my name is actually Raymond Rahman Yadan Shabazz McGregor.
Okay.
That's my full name.
You just a
I like the range. You know, I'll ask this one first. Going back to what Jackie said, there were some questions. And I was talking with Courtney yesterday, and they were talking about an exploration program they have. They want to take 70 young ladies and take them and then work with them throughout the year, provide mentors and all that. But their goal is to provide paid internships. That's something we did not hear. I think Ken pointed that before. It was more apprenticeships. We were looking at least youth had an opportunity with a high school degree to have paid internships. So that's something, that's not a question, but that's something to follow up because I didn't see that in the CTE program, and I think that's something you need to consider. Do I now need to ask a question?
I'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no. You did ask the question. You
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of your goals was improve access to physical and mental health services and into the school system, with the school system. What about the community?
So I mentioned meeting with Malcolm, Cato School at UNC Charlotte. There was also, I'm forgetting, I forget her first name, but it's Dr. Fox who's over there counseling area at Cato. And what she shared with us was that getting into the school systems is fantastic. Looking also at how we get into the community is as critical as what we're looking to do inside of schools. That was the response to me asking her from an innovative standpoint, from her chair, what else should we be looking at? Now, when you look at that, you don't want to put any more brick and mortar. I don't think we want to put any more brick and mortar inside our neighborhoods. So then it becomes incumbent upon us to look inside our neighborhoods and understand what facilities already exist where we may be able to do just what you're talking about, Carly, and bring that into the neighborhoods and then have individuals to come to their neighborhood center, if you will. We don't have enough clinics, we don't have enough, facilities. We all know that. So I'm gonna pause there and say that the conversation that we had last week was very insightful for that particular reason. And again, the recommendation was that we bring Crystal Hill and Hugh into that conversation so we can explore and have those conversations.
Mr. Combs.
Who was Hugh?
I'm sorry, Hugh Hattenbaum, who is the interim superintendent. My apologies.
See, I didn't know that. I should have known that.
No worries.
Because that's part of your problem.
Oh, really?
My question is in regards to two entities. Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board, who you say is the ultimate decision maker, which has clearly demonstrated the lack of intestinal fortitude to do some of these things that they should be doing, they should have been doing. And the county commission that has the intestinal or lack of intestinal fortitude to do some things that will accomplish part of the big problem. You talk about competition and the need to bring in teachers. People. I remember someone quoting President Biden when he said something to people, asking the question about how do we get all these people back to work. He was talking about the food industry, waiters. And he said, pay them more. How the heck can we be competitive when we got teachers starting out at virtually just a cut above minimum wage? And then they bring in executives like you who have all this expertise and thoughts about how to change some of these things, but you still got these morons at the board and the county commission who have the intestinal fortitude to do one of the main accomplishments that they have, and that is quality teachers
Mhm.
and quality administrators. And then you get a superintendent who gets angry, holds up his tent and walks out of a room before his board that hired him.
Mhm.
So how do you accomplish all of that as an outsider coming in to this house of fire?
Mhm. So first of all, thank you for the question, and I mean that. Let's talk about how this can be different, right, than what we've seen previously. The first thing I'll say is my focus, and I'm being very clear about that, is how do we are accountable for creating a better future for the young people of Mecklenburg County, first and foremost. So I'm not looking for friends on any of those, whether you're talking about the county commissioner or you're talking about the school board, I'm not looking for friendships. I'm looking for individuals who are committed to that goal. I have met with several of the county commissioners. I've met with several of the members of the school board. I'm going to do the same thing with the city. I've spoken to the mayor. I've spoken to Dina. These are all one-on-one conversations. And I'm focused on understanding those 7 areas that we're talking about. How do we put details in that we then share with the masses about what it is that we're looking to accomplish, right? And then how do we get those things done? So what I'm saying to you is, if it falls within those 7 areas, that's what we're brought in here to do, okay? Taking no, I'm only assessing individuals based upon the conversations that I'm having with them. Now, I'm talking to many people, you should know, and what you're saying is not lost on us. So our responsibility is to actively and effectively listen and execute to achieve the desired results. Now, these types of forums afford us an opportunity to say what we're working on. And it affords you the opportunity to say, that ain't it, that is it. We're also looking at outcomes. We're focused on, measurements. If you can't measure, then you can't manage. It's just that simple, right? So, not at all skating your question. I heard what you said. I don't have those opinions of individuals. I can tell you that I had a conversation yesterday. Someone asked me, how can you have a conversation with this individual and that individual, and they don't even like each other? I said, well, my intent behind this is not to focus on that. My intent is my relationship with them and getting a commitment from them to get things done. And I can tell you so far in the conversations that I've had, we're moving in that direction.
Okay, I have my question. You've introduced your individuals that's going to be coming from different organizations.
Yes.
Who else would be? What other corporations have already bought into this? There was a blank stuff there. What other corporations are you looking for to be a part of your group?
Yeah. So you'll see that soon. I'm not going to talk about that just yet because we're going through final agreements and, so on and so forth. So I can't speak to that. With 3, I myself, and this is my 3rd weekend, okay? And we're close on several of those. So we will, if you allow us, Winston, we'll come back and we'll provide updates of who those individuals are. But right now, I'm not, at liberty to talk about where they're coming from. Right.
Okay.
Morning, and thank you for being here, Mr. McGregor. My name is Rosalind Allison Jacobs. I have a question about, it's a very full agenda and impressive agenda. I'm curious to know, and I don't know if this is an open-ended relationship that CELC has or if there's a time limit on it, but for whatever time you're involved, have you guys thought about what success looks like and what the associated metrics should be for each of the items on the agenda?
Yes, and I go from here into that meeting where we're talking about what the assessment of the areas is going to be. I'm going to be here. All of the executives in residency are here a minimum of 12 months to 18 months. All of us are here for that period of time. All of us are 100% allocated to this work. Right? I left my role vacant at Novant Health to do this work here. So it's not a part-time, it's a full-time, all in. Was there another question?
Yeah, the question was, the main question was about what success looks like
Yeah.
for each of the
Thank you.
agenda and what the associated metrics
Yeah.
are.
So what we did was, what I did, because coming into a role where you leave your job to come here, the first question I asked was, what does success look like? And when you understand how this is structured with CMS and the CELC, they actually afforded me the opportunity to identify what success looks like. Within those 7 areas, what does success look like? So the meeting that I share that I'm going to after this, we're actually going through each of those areas with CMS, the leadership of CMS, to define, what that is. And that's not something where you decide everything on that day. This is each of those efforts that I showed you, starting at different times, and there are tails to that, right? So from this point until, but the answer to your question is, we are defining what success looks like. That's the sub-bullets under each of the main focus areas. So that's in process.
Thank you.
And I probably should have mentioned that. We started on this program, July 15th was when we hit the ground. And so it's been a lot of listening, learning, if you will, talking to a number of different individuals, so that we can make sure that that success is not tone deaf.
Mr. Arthur Griffin.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Robin, she had my question in mind. You had 7 focus areas.
Yes.
And it would be nice to come back to this group or the public generally to say, okay, here are the 7 focus areas. Here's our current state. Here's our desired state.
Yeah.
Here's where we are in terms of that process of
Yes.
getting from where we are to where we want to be. Is so critically important in terms of transparency, because you're talking about additional resources potentially, or whether that's fiscal resources, volunteer resources, et cetera. Really saying, here's our current state, here's our desired state, here's where we are, and here's what it takes. The thing you said earlier, and I couldn't be wrong, it's an 18-month process or 2-month process?
We, the executives and residents, are there for 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, so it's a short, you got a real short window for significant work, but you're partnering to generate kind of a handoff to the community at large would benefit if there is, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, and here's where we are in terms of our state. The question on CTE, and I asked the young lady up there what instrument she was using with her.
Crystal.
Can't go into the instrument that a lot of the community colleges use in North Carolina is called Test of Essential Academic Skills. And when you get ready to take a CTE, a health pathway, for example, I want to be a surgical technician. I want to be a sonogrammer. You will take a test that involves reading, math, English. And so you talked about RAND, you talked about Lowe's, you talked about Honeywell, as being a lot of talent there. Schools are like talent factories. And so they need talent. There's a huge gap right there between our factory and the utility of that. And so I'd be really interested also in what you define as outcomes when you get a chance to do that, as relates to all the other things that we talked about. Well, thank you, Mr. McGregor, for the role. Sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. When you talk about being a, so I wouldn't say factory, I would say ecosystem, right, of talent, right? Even when you look at, again, we got short-term challenges and we got long-term challenges, right? And when you look at, 140,000 young people, right? Access to 140,000 young people. If you're in need of teachers, you've got an ecosystem that you can develop, right? How do we identify those who desire to be teachers? What do we do to encourage and, influence them to go in that direction? How do we look at, compensation? I completely understand where you're coming from. And I'll be very candid with you. An observation from conversations is it's less about the money. It's more about I gotta have enough money to be able to pay my bills to do what I desire, that I love and aspire to do. I mean, think about wanting to have a profession, and that profession doesn't afford you the opportunity, right, to be able to sustain, your standard of living. Candidly, I equate the passion of the role similar to that of nurses. Nurses are in their job to save lives, period. I mean, that's why they're there, okay? I believe teachers are there because they love the opportunity to invest in human beings and provide them with an avenue, a trajectory of their gifts and talents, right? So I hear you loud and clear. I want to be very candid in saying this is not something that we're doing. This is CMS directs, how we move forward here. And it's important to say that because that is the structure, that we're in. What we're doing is we're partnering. And in that discussion, in those conversations, I believe that you're going to see some of the things that you're asking for. I believe you're going to see those come to fruition.
All right, so we got Ms. Jackie, Ms. Carlenia, Mr. Ken, Ms. Crowder.
Yes, I moved here in 1978 to work at mental health on Billingsley Road. And we've had a lot of iterations of how things look over the years. Right now, we currently have a local management entity of Alliance. And I wanted to know if there's been any discussion, or will there be any discussion with them? Because these particular entities, they work with persons who receive Medicaid. And our young people are having some challenges along with their families. And many of them are persons of low wealth. That's why they're eligible for Medicaid. So I was just wondering if you've looked at some conversations there, because there are quite a few healthcare folk who are part of this partnership.
I have not, but if you will share that information with me, I'd be happy to engage, have some, either myself or one of the other executives in residency to engage and see how we might be able to partner. I will tell you that we're prioritizing that list predicated on the 7 areas, which I clearly see, a connection there. And then how do we maximize the ability to impact as many as we can as we put these outcomes together. Now, know that what we're putting in place is a model that we look into is a repeatable model. So the 18 months that we're here, I want to be real clear that we're looking to set things up. We're looking to set things up so that when we transition out, they can be sustained. That's what we're looking to do. That's the goal here. How do we create sustainability in what it is that we're presenting, so that when we leave, you don't feel that impact of us. If we do that, then there's something that's not working right in the model. And this is not new. This is not something that hasn't been done before. This is something that, candidly speaking, has been done my entire career. I've worked in a lot of different industries, and the goal is when you leave that things don't, in your absence, things, fall apart.
Ms. Carlene?
And I have another question after this, but I'll go with it. Based upon what Jackie, I just want to add, make sure that when you guys check into the mental health aspect of it, that there are individuals who are often left out that look like the children and do not have that opportunity. And I would like to have a process where they are included also. So we need to open that and expand that mental health to where it's not just these few groups of people, but other people who are qualified.
Mhm.
But my question is, Roger asked, what does success look like? And I heard you say you talked with the leadership and you've been meeting with the community. And I know that you have met with Bradford, you met with me, so I know. But all these people that you're talking to, excellent, you know, I'm not gonna say anything about the people at the top because they got this, you know, by doing a great job. But what about the individuals, the grassroots, the teachers and the, we have a department which is engagement. And I mean, when you talk to these individuals who do the work on the ground, have proven results, have we talked to them? Have we met with them? And Arthur mentioned that, you know, short period of time, 12 to 18 months, by that time, you're transitioning to a new superintendent. So how does this carry over? So I asked a lot of things.
That's a great,
I still have some.
nobody's surprised, Carlene. That's a great question. And, you know, the first thing I would say is, hopefully everyone has seen the 4 goals and the guardrails that CMS has come up with. Okay, the 4 goals and guardrails that CMS has come up with. This work is an accelerant of that work. So we had conversations where what we're doing is making sure that what it is that we're providing to our principals, our learning community, superintendents, so on and so forth, making sure that this is palatable. You got to understand, when you're talking about a $2.1 billion budget, 19,000 employees, 140,000 kids, and 180 plus facilities, there's a lot of baton handoffs that have to be synced up, okay? So how do we make sure that it's palatable so that it can be absorbed is what I'm saying, Carlene. The answer to your question about engaging with the community engagement team, absolutely. That is part of the listening, learning, and understanding. They are that intersection point. We clearly understand that, and we'll be speaking to all, there are, if I'm not mistaken, there are 9 of those, if I'm not mistaken, that are there. We'll be speaking to every single one of them as our point into the vast number of schools that they're responsible for. Well, there's certainly going to be that. What I'm saying is, sometimes the juice is more worth the squeeze when you have.
All right, guys, as we approach 9:30, please, I'm going to reiterate, let's keep our questions to within 30 seconds. We got Mr. Kim, Ms. Roslyn, Ms. Nathalie, and then Ms. Robinson.
First of all, I want to offer somewhat of apology because you have clearly stated now that you've only been on the job 3 weeks. And in short, you don't have a clue yet. You have your proposal that you probably submitted to the school board in terms of what it is you all want to do, can do, should do. And you've got all these corporate people involved. But I don't recall seeing in there anywhere where the actual leadership is going to or does incorporate the boots on the ground. In other words, parents, churches, and the people, and even to some degree the students themselves. So in 6 months from now, I'm not gonna be offering any apologies. I'm gonna be really, really interested in what's going on, because obviously, well, they got nothing supposed to do, so they say, go over and help the school board, they need the help. Because if the school board had a clue, they wouldn't be hiring.
Well, and, you know, Ken, this is what I'll say through my lens. I appreciate the school board for affording us the opportunity to come in. We are partners. I started off talking about the executive on loan as opposed to executive in residency. That's real for me. As we come in, we're tied at the hip. We're committed partners. We're engaging. And no apology needed. Anybody who's passionate about these young people and bringing that passion into the room, I have zero problem with that. I'll tell you where I do get conflicted is when I look at the teachers, when I look at the faculty and how they are attacked in the media. Just in my book, that ain't right. I trust me, I understand. I understand the frustration. What I'm saying is we all understand where we're at. Okay. And I understand where it's coming from. I don't agree with it. Because in order to create an environment that gets us back to the articles that I'm reading from, 2011 and previously, we're gonna have to do that together. It's not gonna be the fact it's gonna be all of us coming together, partnering together, when I say grace, I'm not talking about grace, not to achieve outcomes. I'm talking about grace from the standpoint of engaging individuals with respect. So that's my ask of this group, is to go back into the community and let's figure out how we can partner together to move this thing forward. Not saying that we haven't tried to do that. I'm saying with this new initiative, right? Understanding that every day that we're talking about it rather than walking, kids are being impacted. That's the bottom line.
So we got Ms. Roslyn, Ms. McGilvray, Ms. Netflix, Ms. Robinson, Ms. De La Hara.
And my question was about exit strategy with sustainability, so I yield back.
That's a great question, though.
My question is, how did this partnership come about? Is this initiated by CMS or by your group?
Yes, so it's my understanding that CMS and the CELC came together. I think it was, and others would have to tell you. To be candid with you, I just remember what I know is that the CELC said, "How can we help?" Okay, how it was initiated, I don't know. We got a couple people in the room.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding as well that it was a collaborative sort of, coming together. Yeah. And I think it was on part CMS, part of members of CLC who had expressed interest in wanting to help. Yeah. And can I ask my question, because it actually ties right into that, since I'm answering that piece. Yeah. I just appreciate how you framed it, that the CLC showed up and centered the needs of the students and teachers as expressed by CMS. Yeah. And that is so important because there are many entities and forces in the community that often sort of show up and say, hey, here's the shiny new thing, you need to do this and you need to do that. And often those are extreme polar opposites. And then the narrative becomes, well, CMS doesn't want to follow the right path. And one group thinks this is the right path and another group thinks this is the right path. And I say that to say I've always been a big believer that, we have to center the needs of the folks who are boots on the ground, to Ms. Carlinia's point, and the CMS experts. I'm thinking Dr. Barnes, Dr. White, Dr. Radley. There's so many people who know what they're doing and who are putting forth what those needs are. And I just appreciate that you've come in to say, hey, what are your needs? Center your needs and let us, what I'm hearing you say is build capacity. That's what, and correct me, that's what, I guess my question is, do you see that as you guys coming in and setting up a structure, bringing some of your expertise in to help the school district build capacity to execute on some of the initiatives?
So let me tell you what the interim superintendent has done. Okay. So as I mentioned, I meet with him on a weekly basis. He and I sit down one-on-one. In addition to that, he's afforded myself and LaShawna Lowry the opportunity to come into his cabinet meetings. The cabinet meetings has the individuals that you just mentioned and several others in them. So it's an and. So it's about, yes, they're bringing that, and it affords us the opportunity to come into that room and challenge, right? Ask questions, but do that in a manner of, you know, how many times have you brought somebody new into a situation that you've been engaged in, and they come up with other viewpoints? So I only say that to say it's the action. I just want to show you the action of how that's actually happening. So we're being able to, it's 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
But we're actively engaged in those conversations, and we're active participants in those conversations.
Thank you for being here.
All right, Fred.
Okay. Okay, so capitalism, that's the bottom line of everything here in America, money. But we're talking about children. So the decisions being made for such bright individuals, like children are sponges. And I feel, what is your organization doing, I guess, or CMS, to make sure that these children are being nurtured to be the best, most creative people that they could be, even within their differences, instead of just having these factories for assimilation so they can make money or be just a part of this capitalistic system, which is probably a lot of the mental breakdowns, because everything is going against a child's nature from the beginning of what America deems education. And it doesn't seem like it's working. It's working for the benefit of capitalism if you can stand the pressures to assimilate. But for children, that what is being done to nurture children instead of just conform them to what this society thinks that they should be and be rewarded because you aren't conformed.
Tell me your name.
Crystal.
Crystal. Two Crystals. Okay. Kristen. Kristen. My apologies. Kristen. Okay. First and foremost, when you asked that question, the first thing that I thought about was, what are we doing to make sure from a social emotional standpoint that we're engaging young people? I had the opportunity to go to Nairobi about a month and a half ago, and I talked to the Secretary of Education. And children start off with social emotional. They don't even start with, the English, the math. They start off with, social skills, right? So I completely understand where you're coming from and relate to what you're talking about. I'm not the expert on that, and I'd be doing all of us a disservice if I spoke that. I can speak to it from a parental standpoint, and from that standpoint, I agree with you. That young man that just left here, my son, put him in some of the best schools. He got to his junior year and said, "I don't want to go to school anymore." But finished his junior year. I don't want to go to school. Started his, and I had obviously as a father, I had a problem with that. However, what he actually showed me was his initiative and how he wanted to go out here and do something from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And because of the connection that I have with him and the support, I encourage him, after my wife talked me off the ledge, I encourage him to do that. My point that I'm making to you is there has to be a connection that we make with our young people. And I'm gonna tell you something, they know more than we know. We have more experience than they have, but they know more than we know. And that's dangerous if we're just two titanic plates clashing against one another, right? So now I'm gonna go to, we're the 17th largest school system in the country. In the country. The challenges that we hear about inside the news today when it comes to CMS, what do you expect to hear from the 17th largest? Okay, they can pick us apart. If we afford them to, they can pick us apart because of how large and robust we are. So we have to do, in my opinion, a better job of vocalizing, getting more visibility into what's working well within CMS. I'm not skirting. What I'm telling you is there's a lot that I've learned that's working well inside CMS. There are some areas that we have got to fix now. But if you don't have that balanced view and understanding that we're the 17th largest, then you can get caught up, in the headline. And all I'm saying is there are individuals in the room that are not caught up in the headline. They're looking at how do we prepare and get these kids where they need to be? Let's show some examples of where that's happening. Because there are real examples in our underserved and excluded areas where that's happening. It's not happening enough, and it's not happening fast enough, right? So a lot of things. I hope everybody saw the Chetty study that just came out. The Chetty, CHETTY, study that just came out in August. That's the study that, 7-8 years ago came out and said that we were the worst. They offered some insight into how we can improve that from a community standpoint that I thought was extremely valuable. So I apologize, I know I'm probably over my time, but your question about capitalism, I get what you're saying. I myself have to adjust for my own children how I approach, education. So I'm just saying, as we continue to move through this progress, I'm gonna let the experts that can speak to that, I'm gonna let them speak to that, but I hear you.
Before we go to Ms. Carlene, I want to make sure, Ms. Nathalie, you completed your question, and did you have more to it?
You said, everybody said they don't know. I'm not sure how that started. This started.
Yeah, I would say that the two groups came together because they understood the problems. So, beg your pardon?
Moses.
I'm just glad they came together.
Just add, it's been a discussion for a long time.
Okay.
It's not something that happened in the last month or 3
Right.
months. It's been in discussion for a while.
I apologize. I don't think I mentioned, I'm with Novant Health. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. Senior Vice President, focused on new business growth and digital equity was my role prior to being asked by our CEO to step into this role. I say that to say much of where you're coming from. I came in and what is the task that we're looking to accomplish? And then because of my relationships, I just began, kind of a wheel spoke to engage individuals that I knew in the school system, around the school system, people that I know that are committed to the community to get the ball rolling. So I apologize that I don't know that answer.
Ms. Carlene.
Thank you. Rocky, you talk about, and we have 2 school board members here this morning. I am really concerned because we have programs coming up. And basically, I don't see not only in CMS, but even other corporations where there's succession plans. And so I would like to suggest to the ones here, you thought of something that is great. And I think, but I keep hearing 12, 18 months. That'll be over tomorrow. Christmas is here tomorrow. What I'd like for you to think about is how can you tap someone, whether it's CMS employee, this young lady is dynamic, prospect, or a Winston or a Crystal, and say, okay, you go along on this ride with me. I'm gonna give you a stipend. Y'all give stipends for everything else. And we learn together. And then when you leave and go back to being this wonderful senior VP, they're there. And then maybe you guys meet every 3 months, every 6 months. Have it so it's ongoing rather than this program's coming down.
Mm-hmm.
So have it so that you have something that might be evaluated or you continue. And you're large companies, give them a stipend, not no pity. Give them a nice stipend. And let's see if this can continue for another 12 to 18 months. Have an evaluation. If they're not doing good, then, have someone else. But we have some people in the community that know and that you can have a succession plan, or we have some people within CMS that you can do that. And so I know I'm supposed to stop. You had a program called Community Workers. You and I talked about it. I would like for Jennifer and Ms. Carol to ask you about that program. It's where you go into the community, you take your water, you take your chair, and you sit at the door of people who need individuals. So I'd like for them to ask you about that. Then you come back and tell this whole group about it.
Okay. So I heard, really two asks there. One.
I don't need
No. But I heard the ask. I just want to make sure somebody's capturing the ask.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Mr. Griffin?
No, just a question. You with Novant, of course, you got interim executives, and you mentioned several times mental health.
Yes.
North Carolina contracts with 6 managed care service providers in North Carolina. Because of their contract, they determine the delivery mechanism. So if you really want to try to be more flexible with the delivery of mental health services, use your corporate capacity to talk to the state that will allow folk to receive services in a different modality in which those contracts are controlled. So I appreciate you back to the well, talk about what the implications are from the state perspective.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about, alliance.
Yes. Yes. What you just shared, Arthur, took me back to Maynard Jackson and, the mask, not the class. That's well said. And, that's what we learned through the pandemic, candidly, is there are things that we weren't able to do previously, things that we couldn't get approved for years, that literally in days, right? So it's the urgency of now. So noted, and I completely understand where you're coming from there. Thank you for that.
So before we go into announcements, we have time for about 2 more questions after this young lady, Crystal. So if you have a question, all right, Ms. Walton is one. But we'll go ahead with Crystal.
Okay. So you mentioned partnerships regarding tutoring, mental health, and so forth. How will you identify those partnerships that can be made for agencies that are boots on the ground and so forth, or not, within providing impact for the students?
So I mentioned LaShawna Lowry is leading that work. She's doing that in partnership with it's actually Matt Hayes' area. I can't think of the specific person right now, but she and I, beg your pardon?
Is it Congress?
That's right. It's under Congress. It's under Congress. Yeah. we're having conversations with a number of different organizations. If you will provide me with the name, I mean, we're talking to a number of different organizations because this is a web approach. This isn't, it's not a one and done. It's something where, 140,000 kids, we don't want them to have one. The goal is for them to have a selection, right? You don't go to the store and, have one variety of cereal. I mean, the goal is for there to be a selection. So we're having some conversations. If you could share that with me, Crystal, I'll make sure to share that with LaShawn.
Ms. Walker?
I was gonna do an announcement.
Okay, anybody else? No more questions? One more? All right.
I'll say. Rocky.
Yeah.
Are we gonna ever have honey chicken again?
Wow. Okay. Put me on the spot. No, I'm not repeating it. I'll talk to you after the meeting.
Well, with that said, we'd like to thank Mr. Raki McGregor. At this time, we will go into announcements. If anybody has an announcement, please stand. Thank you so much, Mr. McGregor.
I'd like to announce that Project 7 Forward is working with, giving out air conditioning units. I don't know much about it, but I think there are 5,000 BTU. And the persons, need to somewhat be vetted. There's not a lot of information that is needed. But, we want to make sure that the need is taken care of in the community and that there are not folk who may be getting air conditioning units and selling them and all. But there are folk out there, air conditioning units are down, they can't afford to get them back on. The fan's not doing what it needs to do. But if you know someone who needs a fan, air conditioning unit, please let me know. Steve has. Thank you. The need is great, we know.
I'm back this week to do the same announcement because I forgot a very important part of my announcement last week. Now, this is the Black Women's Caucus annual Blackberry Brunch, which is September 10th. It's a brunch, so it starts at 11 a.m. You can find out all the information you need on our website, which is where you need to go to get the tickets, which is what I failed to say last week. So it's easy to remember. It's Black Women Caucus, so it's bwccharlotte.com, and you can get your tickets there. Thank you.
Mr. Combs, you got one?
Yeah, I want to thank you, brother, for that presentation of my website, Monty Lewis, small candidate for school board at large.
And we're going to recognize public officials and those who are running after announcements. We're coming to you.
I've written a story that will appear in the Charlotte Post and the County News this week, announcing that many of you know Anthony's Caribbean Cafe is closing at the end of the month. He is retiring and riding off into the sunset and devote more time to his favorite, and he doesn't have anybody who's interested in taking over the business or buying the business or renting the space. So if you know anybody, get in touch with Tony Martin. But go by there between now and the end of the month. Get some of the little Caribbean rotisserie chicken, because I'm going today.
Thanks so much, Mr. Combs. Monty, go ahead.
School Board District 2. I ran to say someone else in my mind. School Board District 2.
At this time, you got an announcement, Ms. Hartman? Okay.
I just want to let everyone know, and I'll send it to Steve. There's an opportunity every weekend in this month for youth to receive school supplies on the 13th, and there's a major male engagement forum symposium taking place on the 13th in Richie Davis, C.W. Williams, CFPB. They're having a school supply giveaway, and then on the 20th at McCoy Y, Alternative to Violence, they're giving away school supplies. And then on the 27th, there's a symposium for parents at the Valerie Woodard Center with the Faith Alliance. So make sure I'll send this information, the flyers to Steve, that you tell families to go out and support that. And one last thing, I want to say that Rocky didn't grow up in Charlotte, but his wife did. She is the daughter of Cheryl Oliver. And Kim has a mental health. It's called, what is it called?
Yes, it's social emotional learning.
Learning. And she is doing a phenomenal job with our kids. So not only thank you, Rocky, we thank your wife.
A native of McCrory, like somebody add. Can you go ahead?
Father-in-law is Elijah Boyce.
Yes.
All right, at this time, we're going to ask our current and former public officials to stand and please introduce yourselves.
And I actually have an announcement
Okay.
also. So I'm Jennifer De La Hara. I serve on the school board at large. Want to invite you all to watch our meeting tonight. It is streamed if you don't come to the government center. We're going to be talking about our back to school report. We're going to be talking about our federal grants, our Title I, Title II, and Title IV grants in particular tonight, and how those federal monies are applied. We'll be taking some action items, and if you can't make the meeting, what I want to invite you to is I'm going to be starting Zoom calls on the Wednesday after Tuesday night meetings at 5 o'clock. Anyone's welcome to come. I just sent the link to Steve. He'll post it on the newsletter that goes out so that I will recap the meetings, because I know, they're not always convenient and sometimes they can be confusing, and it's just a public service sort of effort that I'm going to take on to sort of recap the meeting, explain what we're doing, hopefully tie also what we're doing to what's going on with the State Board of Education, what's going on with our legislature as well, and then take some, any questions that you have. So please, register for that. I already have 45 people registered. So come on and let's engage. And it's just another way to, communicate, engage with the community. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Carol Sawyer, and I currently serve as the District 4 representative on the school board. I want to thank Raki and his team for the work they're doing. I think I'm really hopeful that you'll be able to help us serve the community better. And I am running for re-election in District 4. I'll be on the ballot in November. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Arthur Griffin. I am a candidate for that large seat on the Mecklenburg County Board of County Commission. I'm also going to use 2 minutes tonight at the school board to ask them not to renege on a promise and to reopen EYL as promised. So tune in to the school board meeting tonight and watch it for 2 minutes.
Anyone other than Monty running would like to announce the candidates?
District 2.
All right. Oh, look at that. I hit before 10 o'clock. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. It's been an amazing forum. Our speaker next week will be. Look on the website. We hope to see y'all next Tuesday here sharp at 8:30 back in the Belmont Center.